Hello everyone, welcome to Puff Time, a time where I sit down, smoke a cigarette, kill my lungs, and talk about what's on my mind. As of late, we've been talking about anger. This is going to be an ongoing topic. Today's video is going to be about fear's effect on anger. To me, fear and anger are very much interlocked. To me, personally. I am a very fearful person. As of late, I've developed a fear of people. Social anxiety. I have trust issues, so fear is a big part of my anger. And before I started reading this section in the workbook, I didn't exactly make that connection. I was like, well, fear is something totally different, but fear can actually breed anger. Fear implies hesitancy, apprehension, and doubt, but it does not always have the image we expect. But fear, like anger, is not one-dimensional. Like I said in the first video I made on anger, it's not just one definition. It's not just one thing. Fear is a lot of things. Fear is the inner insecurity that inhibits us from living in the healthy ways we know we should. Ultimately, fear is that block. Here's a couple of examples from me personally. Again, this is out of a workbook, so it's going to be more personally geared, but it might apply to you, and it might not. There are different manifestations of fear. But one, I feel uncomfortable when I'm not in control of things. Control is something that I heavily desire, because if I feel like I'm out of control of a situation or of myself, I get really afraid. Two, sometimes I use humor to avoid delicate subjects. I do. And we've talked about my humor and my sarcasm, but if I don't want to talk about something, I'm going to try my hardest to get off that topic, but I try it in a way that's not blatantly obvious, like, hey, can we not talk about that? That makes me uncomfortable. If I say that, usually people are like, well, why? Why does it make you uncomfortable? And then they start asking questions that I'm really not comfortable answering, so I use humor to kind of change it. Three, the moods of others have a strong effect on mine. Now, I don't like admitting this. I don't like saying that because it makes me appear to be like someone who changes the way they are just to benefit or to adapt to other people. But it's true. Fear causes defensiveness. It's normal to have some defenses because our world inevitably presents threatening situations. But too often we overuse our defenses. If you ask somebody something that they're uncomfortable with, they're probably going to get defensive because they don't want to talk about it, or because, it's a touchy subject for them. There's three distinct categories of defense. There's denial, evasiveness, and reversal. Now obviously these are three very different things, but they're all a defense mechanism. Let's start with denial. Denial is a refusal to acknowledge personal problems or tensions. Nope. No. Deny it to them, to other people, and you also kind of inwardly deny it yourself because you don't want to accept it. In most cases, denial is subconscious. It's kind of like in your head, and it's one of those things that you do without being fully aware of it, because you're denying it yourself, and ultimately you're denying it to other people. This is what someone with denial might think. It could be disastrous to admit imperfections. I'd hate to think what it would do to my reputation. Nobody's perfect, but sometimes if you have that idea of denial, then you're going to fear that. You don't want people to think negatively of you, so you're going to deny any negativity. And then there's evasiveness. Is a deliberate deception of others. You know for a fact that you're being evasive, but you're trying to pass off to others that you have no idea what they're talking about. Evasiveness is a mark of personal insecurity and a lack of trust in other people. And then there's reversal. And reversal is becoming offensive to keep others on the defense. An example of reversal would be like, say somebody says, wow, you just said that to that person, that was really rude. And in your defense, or in your offense, you're going to say, well, oh yeah? Well, you remember when you told that guy off when he, did you wrong? So it's like you're almost trying to like make them out to be the bad guy as opposed to them focusing on your faults. You're trying to get them to, you're putting them in the spotlight. You're like, hey, forget what I did. What you did is like 4 times worse. So that's reversal. It's where you're kind of like turning the tables, if you will. When you have this defensive attitude, it's better to try and become authentic. Authenticity is living without pretense. Our external lives are consistent with our internal lives. As opposed to being fake or putting up a front just to be defensive to try and get people to not think that you're afraid, it's better to be authentic. So what you're thinking in your head, you're also putting out there externally. So people know what you're really feeling, which can be scary. Because if you don't know how they're going to react, if you don't know how they're going to take it, it might be hard to be authentic. It is not necessary for others to accept all my opinions. I can let them disagree. And, I mean, that's something that's ideal, I think. Because not everybody, in fact, no one is going to accept every single one of your opinions. That's why it's called an opinion. It's your own personal feeling about that. I don't want to be known as combatant, but I believe it can be important to share my disagreements openly. So basically, I don't want to be like that person that everyone's like, oh yeah, anything you say, she's going to argue against or she's going to deny. No, I want to be that person that, well yeah, when I do talk to her about certain things, she does tell me that she disagrees with me, but she's not like all, defensive and angry and like trying to shove it back down my throat. To be authentic, we must like ourselves, who we are. Now this is hard for me because I don't even really know who I am to the full extent that I would like to. I don't exactly like myself. There's some things about me that I'm okay with, that I accept, but there's some things about me that I just really would rather change and be different. Authenticity will help you be less annoyed with others' feelings or reactions because you would not be so consumed with keeping your safe cover. I think the idea there is, you're gonna get annoyed by some people's feelings or whatever, but if you're authentic enough and you're open enough with how you really feel, when you hear how somebody else really feels, you're gonna have more of an understanding, maybe not exactly of their feeling, but the fact that, hey, you know what? They're a person too. They can have their own feelings and opinions. It's okay. Why we struggle with fear. Now, this is a topic that I really was interested in reading, and because I don't know why I struggle with fear. I don't. And I'd like to, because it's really frustrating to be afraid of certain things, because it's like, why am I afraid of this? Especially with me, because I used to be comfortable meeting new people and being around people that I didn't know, and I don't know what changed that in me. So I've always wondered why I struggle with that. Fear is usually learned from childhood or current experiences with significant people in our lives. I grew up in fear. I wasn't exactly surrounded with positive things in my life. I've been through a lot in my younger years that's made me very cautious today. So I 100% agree with fear is learned from childhood. And that brings me to the first reason that people struggle with fear: rejection. And that was one of the big things for me with my friends and my family. Something rejection might say: if I let someone down, it would be the end of me. When we overinterpret rejections, we are guilty of letting others have power, and we're also communicating that I can't trust myself. And the lack of trust is noticed, giving them permission to pounce. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the concept there is, if you act so scared of rejection, if you're so on eggshells and you're so cautious around people, they're going to start noticing it, and they're going to think it's because you don't trust yourself. And ultimately you don't. Because if you're so afraid of rejection, it's because you don't trust yourself that you're good enough to meet their standards, and then you're going to be all like afraid of them and completely freak yourself out, and they're going to notice, so they're going to take advantage of that and be like, well, okay, they don't trust themselves, I can overpower them, I can take control of them. It sucks that people are actually that way, but it's true. But true assertiveness is anchored in the confidence that you are a person with legitimate needs. You don't have to let others' rejection be the final word. Who cares if somebody doesn't accept you for who you are? Get them out of your life. Or just don't associate with them as much. You are your own person. You have your own needs. Just because they don't agree with you, or just because that they might not accept those needs and accept that you're your own person, that doesn't mean that you're just the worst person on the face of the earth and that you don't matter. No, that's not true. And like it says, if somebody rejects you, that doesn't mean it's the final say in everything. Just because somebody rejects you doesn't mean that you are going to live your life as a reject. Another reason that you could struggle with fear is because you're uncertain of others' motives. And that's me, based on what's happened in my life. Fear exists because of the unknowns in other people. I don't want to completely lump everyone in the same category, because there are some genuine people who actually do care about you and how you feel and what you're going through and your needs. But most people in this world, the way society is today and the way the world is today, most people could give a shit less if your needs are being met. Because what they're concerned about is their own needs being met. And they don't care about yours. That lack of trust in people is there because of past experiences. In my past relationships, and when I say relationships, I'm lumping it with family, friends, dating, whatever. But in my past relationships, I've been let down, and I've had my trust broken. For me, it's hard. It's really hard. And I don't want to be that bitter person who's like, I don't trust anyone because everyone's out to get me. Me. But it's sad, but sometimes that's how you have to be. And sometimes you have to accept that a person doesn't have your best interest in mind. And like I stressed before, most people don't have your best interest in mind. Most people are so concerned with their own needs and their own wants that they don't even consider that you're a person too, and you may or may not have needs and wants that are not being met. The best way to handle this is to let go of your shock. This will allow you to respond without pre-existing assumptions about treatment you should receive. So the concept there is, if you don't expect to be treated with respect by everyone, then when that happens, when you're not respected, it's not going to be as much of a, oh my God. If you let go of that, it's going to be a lot easier if they do let you down. I'm not saying live that way. I'm saying live with the idea and the concept that most people are not going to treat you the way you deserve to be treated. And that's wrong. So that was it for this puff time. Don't let your fear control you. Just like you shouldn't let your anger control you. Learn to, be authentic and be real with people and express your fears. And who knows, maybe the people that you're afraid of have the same fear as you. And you guys can talk it out after you've talked about how you're afraid of them rejecting you. They can talk about how they're afraid of you rejecting them. And then you guys can have a good old laugh and everything's great. So stay tuned for the next puff time, in which I will talk about loneliness and how it creates anger. Bye guys.